Crack this code and my company's yours." The words hit the marble hall like a slap. Glass clinked, cameras flashed, and the CEO's laugh bounced off the walls, sharp, practiced, cruel. Everyone laughed with him, almost everyone. Down by the service door, a thin boy froze beside a cleaning cart. His name was Noah, 15. His father, Luis, stood behind him in a faded uniform that still smelled faintly of bleach, even after years in this place. Luis had once kept these same floors, shining back when the company was nothing but a warehouse and a promise. Now he was invisible. The CEO's eyes cut through the crowd. "Even the janitor's kid looks curious," he said, pointing toward them with the same hand that held his champagne. Laughter rose again, rough and certain. "Don't worry, son. This isn't a toy for your kind." Noah's face burned. His father looked down, whispering, "Let it go." But something in the boy's chest locked tight. Around them, people shifted slightly, some smiling, others pretending they hadn't heard. The band stopped tuning. The air itself seemed to wait. The bright lights made every stain on Luis's sleeves look louder. A reporter in the front row lowered her camera. She didn't laugh. Her silence felt heavier than the noise. Noah's throat worked once before he spoke. His voice was steady, too steady. "Can I try?" The room went still. 100 eyes turned. The CEO tilted his head, amused. "You." He chuckled softly, the sound like metal scraping. "Sure, kid, 60 seconds. Let's see the miracle." Luis whispered again, pleading this time, "Noah." But the boy had already stepped into the light. He didn't move like someone ready to play. He moved like someone pushed to the edge of a cliff and finally choosing to jump. From the corner, one of the waiters muttered, "He's out of his mind." Another replied, "He'll regret it." Noah stood before the glowing panel that held the so-called code. The numbers shimmered faintly beneath the glass. Behind him, whispers circled like smoke. He lifted his eyes not to the screen but to the man who had mocked his father. The pause lasted a breath too long enough for everyone to feel the imbalance between power and dignity. The timer began to tick. You ever watched someone be humiliated in a place where they once gave everything and couldn't say a word? I'd really like to know how you handled that moment in your life. Maybe share it below. Luis pressed both hands together, knuckles white. He had mopped this floor for 20 years. He had seen celebrations, layoffs, even weddings staged here. But never this a crowd gathered to watch his child become a joke. The CEO leaned toward a partner and whispered loud enough for microphones to catch, "If he actually does it, I'll retire tonight." Laughter again. It rolled over Noah like cold wind. Noah inhaled slowly, remembering the stories his father once told him about this company. The early days, the night he stayed through a power cut, saving the entire warehouse from flooding. Nobody remembered that now. The clock read 45 seconds. Noah's hands hovered over the glass. A murmur spread through the room. Someone said, "He's just staring." Another, "Maybe he froze." But Noah wasn't frozen. He was reading the pattern, the rhythm, the silence. The CEO's smile faltered just a little. Luis caught it. That single flicker of uncertainty from the man who'd erased him years ago. The boy's finger moved once. A soft tone rang out. Then another. The hall hushed so suddenly you could hear the hum of the lights. At 58 seconds, something clicked. A soft mechanical sound followed by a gasp from the crowd. The glass cube unlocked. The CEO didn't speak. He just stared at the open cube as if it had betrayed him. Noah stepped back without a word. Luis stood frozen, torn between disbelief and pride that felt almost dangerous to show. And somewhere behind the cameras, the reporter whispered to herself, 60 seconds. The crowd began to murmur again, but this time no one laughed. The sound of the unlocked cube still lingered when the applause began, nervous at first, then louder. But the CEO didn't clap. He smiled tight and shallow and said quietly, "Good guess, kid." Noah looked down at his hands. It wasn't a guess. The words slipped out before he could stop them. A flicker of irritation crossed the CEO's face. The crowd laughed again, but softer now, unsure whom to follow. Luis tried to step forward to pull his son away, but a guard blocked him. "Please, sir, let's not make a scene." A scene. As if years of invisible labor weren't a scene already. Noah looked around at the people watching the men with badges that carried his father's old title maintenance lead, the same position they'd stripped from Luis 5 years ago during restructuring. He recognized one of them, a tall man with slick hair who once learned from Luis how to clear a clogged pump line. He looked away when Noah's eyes met his. "Who are you again?" The CEO asked, his tone turning cold. "You work here." Luis swallowed. "I used to. I still come in as support staff on night shift." The CEO's mouth curved. "Ah, outsourced labor. That explains the enthusiasm." Laughter again this time, sharp and obedient. Luis nodded once, too proud to bow, too poor to fight. "We just clean what's left behind, sir." Noah's jaw tightened. "You mean what everyone else ignores?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The reporter lifted her camera again. The CEO's voice dropped. "Careful, son. Pride's a dangerous thing when you have nothing to back it up." "I didn't come to show pride," Noah said quietly. "I came to show you forgot your own company's code." A hush fell. Luis felt the air leave his lungs. Noah stopped, but the boy didn't. He took a step closer to the display, pointing at the digits glowing faintly on the screen. "This pattern isn't random. It's built from the founding date, the one printed on every company plaque." "You just stopped looking." The CEO froze. The founding date was a number he'd used everywhere in passwords and anniversary speeches engraved on his first product prototype. He had turned it into a slogan, a brand, a myth, and yet in his own public challenge he'd buried it under vanity. The murmuring began again, sharper this time. Someone whispered, "He's right." Another, "It's the company motto code." The CEO's assistant whispered something in his ear. His jaw flexed. Luis felt the weight of every gaze pressing against them. He wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. He remembered when he used to walk these halls at dawn, when the founder himself would nod to him, call him by name, Luis. Not staff, not cleaner. Luis. Now even the walls felt unfamiliar. The new polished floor reflected everything except the people who kept it clean. Have you ever walked into a place you built only to feel like a stranger inside it? I wonder how many of us have carried that silence. Feel free to share if you've been there once. The CEO straightened his tie and smiled for the cameras again. "Impressive observation, young man. Maybe we should hire you in marketing." The tone was forced, his eyes flat. Luis bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir. We'll just be on our way." "Wait." The reporter stepped forward. "Sir, you just offered your company to anyone who cracked the code. Will you honor that promise?" The CEO's smile hardened. It was a metaphor. "Let's not take jokes literally." Her pen froze above her notebook. It didn't sound like a joke. The tension returned heavier now. The guests sensed the shift and began to pull out their phones, some recording, some pretending they weren't. Luis whispered, "Let's go, son." But Noah's gaze stayed locked on the man who had made them small. He didn't mean to joke. He meant to humiliate. The CEO's voice cut through the air like a blade. "That's enough. Security." "Don't," the reporter said, her voice steady. "If you touch them, that's the story tonight." The room fell into stunned silence again. Luis placed a hand on his son's shoulder, trembling. "You've done enough, Noah." Noah nodded slowly, finally stepping back toward his father. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the kind that comes before a storm. They left through the same side door they'd entered. Behind them, laughter tried to fill the gap, but it sounded thin, nervous, unfinished. Noah glanced back once at the hall that had just turned his life upside down. The CEO was still standing in the light, smiling for cameras that had stopped flashing. Outside, the air smelled of rain and exhaust. Luis walked fast, his eyes on the pavement. Noah wanted to speak, to apologize, but the words caught behind his teeth. A car drove past, splashing their shoes with dirty water. Neither of them reacted. In the reflection of a glass window, Noah saw himself wet, tired, trembling, but something had shifted. The fear that used to live in him was gone, replaced by something quieter, heavier, harder. He whispered, "He won't forget us again." And his father said nothing because he knew the boy was right. The rain followed them home that night, streaking the bus windows with silver lines. Luis sat with his shoulders hunched, his hands still trembling against his knees. Noah stared out the window, replaying the moment when the cube unlocked, when the whole room gasped and then turned against them. His father hadn't spoken a word since they left the building. The silence between them felt heavier than the rain. When the bus stopped near their apartment complex, Louise finally said, "You shouldn't have spoken to him like that." "I didn't mean to make trouble," Noah murmured. "You didn't make trouble," Louise said after a pause. "You showed him something he didn't want to see." They walked past a flickering streetlight, stepping carefully around puddles that mirrored their tired faces. Inside their small apartment, the air smelled of detergent and damp clothes. The table still held the bills Luis hadn't paid. A single photo hung above it, Luis in his old work uniform standing beside the company founder at the ribbon-cutting ceremony 20 years ago. The founder had his arm around him smiling. That photo used to make Luis proud. Now it felt like something from another life. He sat down slowly, rubbing his eyes. "Tomorrow they'll fire me, maybe blacklist me too." Noah hesitated. "You think it matters now?" Luis looked up. "It always matters when you have nothing else." Noah didn't reply. He opened his backpack, pulling out his notebook, the one where he wrote down quotes he liked from his father teachers, even janitors from other buildings. He flipped through the pages until he found one from years ago written in pencil. "You can take orders from a man without bowing to him." That was his father's handwriting. He closed the notebook and said quietly, "He used you, Dad. He took everything you gave that place and made it disappear." Luis nodded once, too tired to argue. "It's how the world works. People like him don't see people like us." Noah's voice broke. "Then make them see." Luis smiled faintly. "You already did." The next morning, Luis went to work early. The building seemed larger than before, the walls echoing with whispers he couldn't quite hear. Colleagues avoided his eyes. One of them, a man he'd trained years ago, said quietly, "You should have kept the boy out of it." Luis just nodded. "Maybe you're right." But when he entered the break room, he saw the newspaper folded on the table. His son's picture wasn't there, but the headline was, "Teen Outsmarts CEO in Live Challenge." He froze. Below it, a blurry photo showed the unlocked cube, the CEO's face half-turned in disbelief. People were talking. Some said the boy cheated. Others said the challenge was rigged. But a few whispered something different, that the boy had reminded everyone what arrogance really looked like. Luis picked up the paper, folded it carefully, and slipped it into his pocket. He didn't know if it would save him or destroy him. But he wanted to keep proof that his son had stood tall for 60 seconds when the world tried to make him small. At noon, the CEO called him into the office. The room was cold, too white, too clean. The CEO stood by the window, hands behind his back. "I see your son made the news." Luis said nothing. The man turned slowly. "You embarrassed me in front of my investors. You think I'll let that go?" Luis swallowed. "My son didn't embarrass you. He reminded you of your own company's history." The CEO's smile was thin. "You people always confuse truth with disrespect." Luis lowered his eyes. "If truth feels like disrespect, maybe you've been lying too long." The silence after that sentence stretched so long that even the ticking clock sounded ashamed. "You're done here," the CEO said. "Leave your badge, and tell your boy to stay away from my property." Luis unclipped the badge, set it on the desk, and left without looking back. Outside, he took the folded newspaper from his pocket and stared at the headline again. The letters blurred in the sunlight. His hands didn't shake this time. He whispered, "He'll hear about this, Noah. They all will." That night, Noah found his father sitting on the balcony staring at the city lights. "You lost your job," Noah said quietly. Luis nodded. "Maybe I found my voice instead." Noah sat beside him. "What will we do now?" Luis looked at the skyline. "We start again, but this time we don't stay quiet." Down below, the city hummed like nothing had changed. But somewhere inside that noise, something small had cracked the silence that protected men like the CEO. And for the first time in years, Luis smiled without guilt. By the third morning, the story had reached every news feed in the city. The headline shifted from curiosity to controversy. Teen's victory over CEO questioned, was it a staged publicity stunt? Noah stared at the TV in the corner store window on his way to school. The anchor's voice was smooth, disbelieving. "Sources close to the company claim the boy had inside help," she said. "An internal review is underway." He didn't need to ask who the source was. Inside, his classmates huddled around their phones. Some smiled at him with mock admiration. Others whispered. One boy said, "Hey, genius, maybe hack the vending machine next." Noah kept walking. At lunch, his teacher called him into the hallway. She looked uneasy. "Noah, there's a reporter outside asking for you." I told them it's not appropriate, but they insist they just want to ask one question. He nodded. Let them ask. The reporter was from a local paper holding a small recorder. Her eyes were kind, but tired. "Is it true your father helped you?" "No," Noah said simply. "Then how did you know the code?" "I just paid attention." She paused, studying him. "You understand they're trying to make this look like fraud." "I know," Noah said. "That's what people like him do when truth doesn't fit their story." She turned off the recorder slowly. "That's a strong sentence. Are you sure you want it printed?" "Yes." She smiled faintly. "Then let's print it." At home, Luis was already waiting with 2 envelopes on the table, one from the company's legal department, one from the bank. He slid the first across the table. "They're accusing us of defamation, saying we damaged their reputation by claiming the code wasn't random." Noah frowned. "They can't do that. They can try." Luis's voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "And the bank says our payment is overdue. Without the job, we'll lose the apartment in 3 months." Noah looked around the small room, the cracked paint, the photo of the founder, the smell of his father's work jacket drying by the fan. "We'll find a way." Luis laughed softly. "You sound like me at your age." Noah hesitated. "You stopped sounding like that." Luis nodded. "Because the world teaches you when to shut up." Noah's eyes darkened. "Then maybe it's time the world learns to listen again." 2 days later, a new video appeared online. Security footage from the event leaked anonymously. It showed the entire scene, the CEO mocking the crowd, laughing, the boy standing up, the timer ticking down. There was no cheating, no hidden signals, just a child with quiet focus. By evening, the clip had over 1 million views. The comments flooded and arrogance exposed. "That boy's courage gave me chills. Fire the CEO." The company's PR team went into overdrive, calling it a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The internet doesn't forget humiliation, it magnifies it. Luis watched the video once, then turned it off. "They'll come after us harder now," he said quietly. "They already did," Noah replied. "But now everyone saw what he's like." The phone rang. Luis answered, expecting another threat. But the voice on the other end was calm, confident female. "My name's Clara Ruiz, investigative journalist. I'd like to meet with you both. There's something you need to know about your former employer." Luis hesitated. "Why us?" "Because the story doesn't end with a boy and a code," she said. "It starts there." They met that evening in a small cafe near the train station. Clara arrived in a gray coat laptop bag slung across her shoulder. She ordered tea for them without asking. When she spoke, her tone was low, deliberate. "I've been following this company for years. Your CEO built his empire on contracts that don't exist anymore. Projects registered under shell firms, fake subsidiaries, falsified safety records." Luis frowned. "You're saying he's breaking the law?" Clara nodded. "I'm saying he's been doing it for a decade. Your son embarrassed him publicly. That makes you dangerous." Noah leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Clara's eyes were steady. "You tell the truth, on record." Luis hesitated. "We don't have money for lawyers." "You won't need any," Clara said. "You'll have evidence." She slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything's here. Contracts, reports, signatures, all linked to him." Luis didn't touch it. "Where did you get this?" "Someone from inside gave it to me," she said. "But they're scared to go public. If you speak, you can make it real." Noah looked at the drive like it was a bomb. "What if he comes after us again?" Clara smiled faintly. "He already did. The difference now is this time you're not alone." That night, Luis couldn't sleep. The city outside was quiet, but his mind raced. He'd spent his whole life cleaning other people's messes. Maybe this was one he was meant to clean too. At dawn, he sat beside his son on the balcony, the flash drive in his hand. "You were right," he said. "He won't forget us." Noah looked at the sunrise. "Then let's make sure no one else does either." And somewhere in a corner office downtown, the CEO opened his inbox to find the headline he feared most. "Whistleblower evidence links CEO to fraud investigation." The walls around him didn't echo with laughter this time, only silence. The morning the story broke, Luis didn't have to watch the news. He could feel it in the street. People were talking differently, quieter, quicker, glancing over their shoulders. By noon, trucks from the Financial Crimes Division rolled into the company's glass tower. Cameras lined the sidewalks, reporters shouting questions that bounced uselessly off tinted windows. Luis and Noah watched from across the street, standing near the same building entrance where they'd once been ignored. I used to clean those windows, Luis said. Funny how you never notice how high something is until you see it start to crack. Inside chaos. The CEO, Richard Halden, barked orders no one obeyed. Phones kept ringing. A secretary cried. Board members whispered in corners, their confidence dissolving by the minute. A journalist's voice cut through the noise outside Mr. Halden. Can you confirm the authenticity of the documents linking you to shell companies in Panama? Richard forced a smile for the cameras. These allegations are false. We're cooperating fully. His voice trembled on fully. Noah watched him, expression calm. He looked smaller than I remember. Luis said nothing. His hands were in his pockets, clutching the folded newspaper from weeks ago, the one with his son's picture blurred behind the headline. That afternoon, Clara Ruiz called them again. It's official, she said. They're opening an inquiry. The board has suspended Halden indefinitely. Luis closed his eyes. And what about us? You'll be mentioned in the report as witnesses, not suspects. I made sure of it. Luis exhaled slowly. Thank you. You don't owe me thanks, she said. Just stay safe. Men like him don't accept loss easily. He looked at Noah. He's already lost the one thing he can't buy back, his image. 2 days later, their doorbell rang. Luis opened it to find a man in a suit company legal representative holding a folder. Mr. Morales, the man said, polite but tense. We're here to offer a settlement. The company would like to issue a formal apology and a compensation package in exchange for your silence regarding the ongoing case. Luis looked at the folder but didn't touch it. You want me quiet again? The man cleared his throat. We want closure. Luis smiled faintly. You want comfort. You don't get that anymore. He closed the door. Noah watched him from the table. You said no. I said we already cleaned enough for them. That night, messages flooded in, people online calling Luis a hero, others accusing him of seeking attention. Clara texted, They're scared. That means it's working. Luis replied only, We didn't plan this to win. We just wanted to be seen. The next morning, a video surfaced online, a clip from the company's security feed showing the CEO alone in his office shouting into a phone. His words were muffled, but one phrase stood out clearly. It was supposed to be a stunt. The internet didn't need context. Within hours, the story turned from scandal to collapse. Stocks plummeted. Employees resigned. The tower's logo was covered with black fabric. Luis and Noah watched the footage together. Neither smiled. Noah said quietly, It feels strange. I thought I'd be happy. Luis nodded. You're not supposed to be happy when someone ruins themselves. Just relieved it's over. But it wasn't over yet. Late that evening, a message arrived from Clara. You both need to see this. It's about the founder. They met again at the same cafe, but this time Clara's expression was heavier. The documents we uncovered, some of them include the original founder's name, she said. Before Halden took over, your father, Luis, was listed as part of the Internal Safety Board. His signature appears on the leak report that saved the company 20 years ago. Luis frowned. I never signed anything. I can't even read those legal forms. Clara slid another paper across the table. That's because someone forged it later, Halden did. He took your act your night of saving the plant and turned it into his founding myth. Luis stared at the paper. His name spelled wrong slightly, but there. The ink was newer than it should have been. Noah whispered, He built his empire on your name. Luis felt something heavy and quiet inside him break. He said then maybe the only thing left to do is take it back. A week later, Clara's full exposé went live, The Real Founder. How a janitor's heroic night built an empire. The opening image wasn't the CEO's office. It was a photograph of Luis standing beside his son, both in worn shirts, both staring at the glass tower that no longer carried the company's logo. The article spread everywhere. Schools discussed it. Workers shared it. The story became something larger than one company. It became a mirror. For days, Luis's phone rang, non-stop interviews, job offers, even scholarships for Noah. He accepted none of them immediately. He just sat by the window watching the tower in the distance as cranes began taking down the sign letter by letter. Each letter fell with a soft metallic sound, almost like an apology. He whispered, That's enough, Noah asked. You're not angry anymore. Luis smiled faintly. Anger built his world. I won't use it to rebuild mine. Outside, the city lights flickered, not poetic, just electric cold, real. But this time they weren't mocking him. They were simply there. And for the first time in 20 years, Luis felt seen. The tower came down in pieces. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a slow dismantling floor by floor until it was nothing more than glass and dust. People stopped calling it Halden Industries. They called it the building that forgot its own name. Luis passed by sometimes on his way to the grocery store. Workers in orange helmets were removing the last of the windows. The steel frame looked skeletal against the sky. He didn't stop to stare. He'd seen enough hollow structures in his life. At home, Noah sat at the kitchen table surrounded by letters, real ones, not emails. Scholarship offers, community awards, invitations to speak at schools. Luis asked, "Which one are you going to answer first?" Noah smiled faintly. "I'm not sure yet. I don't want to talk about what happened. I want to talk about what made it possible." Luis nodded slowly. "People will listen to you now." Noah looked down. They should have listened before. His father's gaze softened. That's how change starts. People listen after it hurts. That week, Clara Ruiz came by for coffee. She'd lost sleep but gained something else: respect. "The case is over," she said. "Halden's facing trial. He pleaded guilty to falsification and fraud." Luis stirred his coffee. "He'll go to prison for a while." "But it's not about him anymore," she said. "It's about everyone who watched him and thought silence was safety." Luis nodded. "Silence is never safe. It just delays the noise." Clara smiled. "You should write that down." He shook his head. "I'll leave the writing to people who know how to spell it right." They laughed quietly. Noah came out from the kitchen holding one of the letters. "Ms. Ruiz, can I ask you something? Why did you help us?" Clara looked at him for a moment. "Because once someone helped me, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life pretending I forgot." A month later, Luis received a letter from the city council. They were holding a ceremony to honor citizens who had restored integrity and dignity to the workplace. His name was on the list. He almost threw it away, but Noah convinced him to go. The event was quiet, held in the same district where the company once stood. No gold decorations this time, no cameras flashing like weapons, just folding chairs and plain light. When they called his name, Luis stood awkwardly adjusting his old jacket. He wasn't used to people looking at him without suspicion. The speaker said, "Sometimes truth comes from places we never think to look." He shook the man's hand, nodded politely, and stepped back. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need one. Afterward, an older woman from the crowd approached him. "I used to clean offices too," she said. "I never thought anyone would tell our story." Luis smiled. "I didn't tell it. My son did." The woman touched his arm gently. Then he learned from a good man. That evening, back home, Luis placed the small award on the shelf beside the old photograph from 20 years ago. The founder's smile in the photo looked different now, less proud, more naive. He whispered, "I hope you'd be proud of how it ended." Noah came up behind him. "You know, people online keep calling me the boy who cracked the code." Luis chuckled. "That's one way to say you changed my life." "It's not my code that mattered," Noah said. "It was yours." Later that night, Luis stepped onto the balcony. The air smelled of rain again. The city felt calmer, almost forgiving. Across the skyline, where the company tower once stood, only an empty lot, remained flat, silent, waiting for something new. He thought about everything that had happened. Humiliation, anger, truth, and finally this quiet peace. He realized peace doesn't mean forgetting, it means not needing revenge anymore. Noah joined him, leaning on the railing. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The company?" "No, being invisible." Luis laughed softly. "Sometimes it was easier, but it's better this way." Noah nodded, looking out at the skyline. "You think they'll build something there again?" "They will," Luis said. "And maybe this time they'll build it right." The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of traffic, the city's heartbeat returning to normal. Luis didn't say another word. He didn't need to. For the first time in decades, silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. A year passed. The lot where Halden's tower once stood had turned into an open plaza. Children played there after school, their laughter replacing the sound of machines. In the center of the plaza stood a small monument, just glass and stone, no gold, no marble. Etched across it were the words, "Integrity unlocks every door." Beneath that, in smaller letters, "Dedicated to those who worked unseen." Luis stood before it, hands in his jacket pockets. He didn't come for attention. He came because the plaque had his name on it, misspelled slightly again, but this time it didn't bother him. He ran his thumb along the engraved letters. "It's strange," he said softly. I used to scrub the floor beneath this building. Now they polished my name into the stone." Beside him, Noah smiled. "Maybe that's how life balances itself." Luis shook his head. "No, life doesn't balance anything. People do." They walked to a nearby bench. A few journalists were still taking pictures for an anniversary piece about the boy who cracked the code. One of them approached Noah with a microphone. "You've inspired a lot of people. How do you feel a year later?" Noah paused. "Grateful. But I hope people remember my father more than me. I just pressed a button. He spent his life doing the right thing when no one was watching." The reporter smiled. "That's a good line. Can I quote you?" "Sure," he said. "Just spell his name right this time." Luis laughed quietly. Later that evening, Noah spoke at a youth conference. The hall wasn't grand, but it was full. Students, teachers, factory workers, all wanting to hear how a janitor's son had changed an empire. He didn't bring notes. He just told it plainly. "I wasn't brave," he said. "I was tired. Tired of seeing people like my dad treated as if they didn't exist. I didn't plan anything. I just stopped pretending I didn't see what was wrong." The room was silent, not out of politeness, but because every word felt familiar. He continued. "What happened wasn't about a company or a code. It was about people remembering that dignity doesn't need permission." Applause started soft, then stronger, until it filled the hall. At the back of the room, Luis stood quietly, hands clasped, eyes wet but steady. After the speech, a teacher approached him. "You must be proud." Luis smiled. "I always was. I just didn't say it loud enough before." The next morning, Noah found an envelope on their doorstep. Inside was a single note unsigned. "You reminded me of who I used to be. Thank you." Noah turned it over. On the back was a faded corporate seal, the old company's logo embossed but nearly worn away. He showed it to his father. "You think it's from him?" Luis studied it. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter who sent it. The important thing is that someone finally understood." He folded the paper and placed it next to the award on their shelf. That night, as the city lights shimmered across the river, Luis sat on the balcony with a mug of coffee. Noah joined him, notebook in hand. "What are you writing?" Luis asked. "Just ideas," Noah said. "For a book, maybe. About people who never thought their lives were stories until someone finally listened." Luis smiled. "Then start with yours." Noah nodded, closing the notebook. "Maybe I already did." A soft wind moved through the balcony, carrying the faint echo of laughter from the plaza below. It sounded like peace, but also like something else continuation. 60 seconds had changed their lives. But what followed the silence, the courage, the truth, that's what defined them. Luis looked out over the skyline. "You know," he said quietly, "for years I thought no one saw me. Turns out I just had to raise my head." Noah smiled. "And when you did, the world looked back." They sat there without another word, two silhouettes in the dim light. No revenge, no victory parade. Just the quiet certainty that they were finally real again.